Feilu Novel Network A.level signed novel. Thunderbolt Four Realms Airlines, Feilu Chinese Network A.level signed novel. This article is set up as a fan-derived, modern aerial, and connected four realms, allowing passengers to travel to various realms by plane. The four realms are interconnected, mostly employees of Four Realms Airlines. The chairman is Su Huanzhen, the logistics minister is Chu Shirtu, the security minister is a one-page book, and most of the other personnel are pilots. If you want to watch the original drama, please fill in the original drama. If you like this article, please click on the bookmark. If you don't like it, please do not enter, and irrelevant malicious comments will be deleted directly. Thank you very much. This article has been saved and won't be pitted. Don't worry about following it. If you like it, just click on the bookmark. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. First Boeing 787-1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hello passengers, flight SJ-1458 from the 6th Heaven Realm to Kujing is about to depart. Please board as soon as possible. Hello passengers, flight SJ-1458 from the 6th Heaven Realm to Kujing is about to depart. Please board as soon as possible. A pleasant female voice came from the loudspeaker, reminding passengers to board the plane as soon as possible. Most of the passengers had already boarded the flight through the ticket gate. Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor, they walked through the clean and spacious hall and went to the ticket counter to place their tickets and passports on the counter. The staff checked the tickets and passports, then looked up at the man standing in front of the counter and said, "Please take off your sunglasses." Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor, he took off his sunglasses with one hand and revealed a pair of abnormal pupils. The staff checked the photo on his passport and returned the ticket and passport to him, saying, "Okay, I wish you a pleasant journey. Please board this way." The beautiful staff pointed the way to the security checkpoint and boarding for Emperor abandoned, and he replied, "Thank you." Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor put on sunglasses and left the ticket inspection area, went to the ticket inspection area, put his handbag on the conveyor belt for security check, passed through the ticket gate smoothly, and then boarded the plane of this flight. The seat is economy class 78, with a travel time of 10 hours. Abandoning the ticket purchased by the Heavenly Emperor himself, since you have transferred it, you need to first experience the general public's flight experience in advance. Put the handbag on the shelf above your head, remove the sunglasses, hang it in your shirt pocket, take out your phone, turn it off, flip your wrist to check the time, and there is still 3 minutes left to take off. There is security at the cabin door, close the cabin door, and the outside personnel move the stairs. Beautiful empty space. Sister Chi-Yun Ran stood at the front, take off the walkie-talkie and start making the final announcement with a smile on your face. Hello passengers, welcome aboard the plane from the 6th-day realm to adversity. First of all, we wish you a pleasant journey. Flight number SJ-1458 departs from the 6th-day realm without any stops, passing through the Four Devils realm and the Gathering realm one by one, and then embarking on a 10-hour journey to the beautiful and culturally profound adversity. The plane is about to take off, and to ensure a smooth takeoff and safe arrival at the destination, please fasten your seatbelts. Please turn off your phones, do not use electronic products, and do not smoke on the plane. Repeat this, the plane is about to take off, please fasten your seatbelts. Please turn off your phones, and do not use electronic products. Do not smoke on the plane. If necessary, please ring the bell above your head. There will be flight attendants at your service. Once again, I wish you a pleasant journey. Chi-Yun Ran put the walkie-talkie back in place, and then 2 other flight attendants walked over to check if the passengers had turned off their phones, fastened their seatbelts, smiled throughout the journey, and spoke softly. Their attitude was extremely good, making the passengers feel at ease. For the flight attendant service, the Emperor gave a score of 6, which was considered a pass. 1 minute before takeoff, a boy's voice was heard through the loudspeaker, deep and magnetic, yet with a hint of laziness. The emperor raised his eyebrows and said, "Are you still awake or is that the sound?" The loudspeaker said, "Hello passengers, I am the captain of this flight. Tsang, I will be piloting this flight. First of all, I wish you a pleasant journey. The plane is taking off now." Tsang turned off the walkie-talkie, rechecked the instrument parameters in front of him, and then pressed the button. The plane began taxiing on the runway, accelerating at a faster speed. The huge wings on both sides raised strong winds, and after taxiing for a distance, the plane raised its head and smoothly left the ground at the tail. The rollers under the plane took off, and the plane entered an upward state. Tsang focused on controlling the speed and altitude of the plane. Sitting on his co-pilot's seat was Yibu Lianhua, who assisted him by not reporting the flight altitude and speed. The scenery outside constantly changed, and then all turned into blue sky and white clouds. The plane eventually passed through clouds and reached the stratosphere, and the speed also stabilized. Tsang's driving skills were excellent. The entire ascent process went very smoothly. Qi Yunran opened the door of the driver's cab, put down 2 cups of hot tea, and asked, "How are you now?" "Everything went smoothly," Tsang replied, and Qi Yunran walked out again. Tsang adjusted his speed. Step by step, Lianhua picked up the walkie-talkie and spoke up, "Hello passengers, I am the co-pilot of this flight, Lianhua Step. I will broadcast the flight data for you. It is now 5 p.m. in distress time, and the plane has flown to the troposphere, with an altitude of 1,300 meters and a speed of 900 kilometers per hour. The plane will fly away from the 6-day boundary in an hour. Looking out the window, you can also see the sunset of the 6-day boundary. Wishing you a pleasant journey." Step by step, Lianhua put down the walkie-talkie, took out her flight notes, and recorded the flight data. The plane had flown smoothly, so Tsang changed it to autopilot and did not leave. Looking out from here, below the plane was a sea of clouds, and the sun's rays could still be seen. The setting sun's radiance was even more dazzling and colorful from the sky, laying a mysterious layer of colorful brilliance on the sea of clouds, which was a feast for the eyes. Part 1 Boeing 787-2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The plane left the 6th heavenly realm and flew to the upper heavenly realm of the 4 devils. The upper heavenly realm is the highest geographical location of the 4 devils and also the birthplace of the 4 devils' holy source, naturally becoming the capital of the 4 devils' realm. However, the 4 devils' realm is governed separately and does not interfere with each other's internal affairs. Only when there is turmoil in the other 3 realms that endangers the peace of the 4 devils' realm, will the upper heavenly realm send people to mediate. At this time, it is already dark, and from a high altitude, it can be seen that the 4 devils' holy source slowly flows in the night. The misty forests on both sides emit scattered light, forming a faint color. A circular shape. When it was time for dinner, the stewardess pushed the car and put today's dinner in the car. The plain meal with meat and vegetables was delivered to the passengers one by one. The Emperor of Abandon also received his own share and asked for a cup of hot black tea. The dinner dishes were kung pao chicken, braised pork belly, shredded earth beans, cabbage, and the addition of a fried egg was reasonable and not bad. The Emperor of Abandon gave the plain meal 6 points and barely passed. Sitting next to the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven was a middle-aged man with a slightly chubby figure, wearing glasses. From the analysis of the mirror thickness, it should be between 700 and 800 degrees. He wore a hat on his head, with the brim pulled low, and had been listening to music since boarding the plane. Although he sat inside, he didn't look outside the window from beginning to end, let alone say a word to the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven. From studying the slogans on the plane to studying the advertising paper pasted behind the seat, he finally took out the plane magazine and flipped through pages one by one. It was unclear whether he had read it or not. However, when distributing the plain meal, he ordered 2 sets of plain meals and a large cup of hot black coffee. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven sat next to him, and the bitter taste of black coffee was not very pleasant. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven took a sip of hot tea and began to eat. The passengers need to eat, and the pilot also needs to eat. Tsang and Ibu took turns eating dinner with Lianhua. Modern airplanes, as long as the weather doesn't change too much, basically don't need to fly manually and can be switched to automatic driving. Moreover, this line has flown countless times and is familiar with everything on the line. Moreover, with Lianhua as the co-pilot, there is no need to worry. When Qi Yunran came in to collect the plates, he said, "The passenger who ordered 2 just now seems to have not eaten enough, and ordered another dinner." Tsang and Ibu Lianhua both looked over, and it was rare for them to have such a good appetite when flying. Ibu Lianhua said, "Then give him an extra dessert." Red Cloud Ran replied, "Okay." Qi Yunran tidied up the plates and took them out for a meal. During the meal, the plane had already flown from the heavenly realm to the sky above the Tower of Mercy. The bright moon outside was full, and the silver moonlight illuminated the night sky. From here, the moon was much larger than from the ground, and the pits and depressions on the moon were clearly visible. It turned out that there were no jade trees or rabbits on the moon, let alone the beautiful Chang'e woman. It was just a barren land with beautiful and gentle music played by the flight attendants. A sweet voice rang out from the loudspeaker. "Hello passengers, the plane has left the 6th heavenly realm and flown over the upper heavenly realm. It is now above the Tower of Mercy. Looking down from the plane, you can see the night pearl at the top of the Tower of Mercy. Isn't it very beautiful, like a dream? It is the most precious relic of the Tower of Mercy. Alright, it won't delay everyone's appreciation of the beautiful scenery. Wishing you a pleasant journey." The music continued to play, and although the journey was long, it was not boring. Every time we passed by a place, there were always dedicated people who introduced us. In addition, the beautiful flight attendant often pushed the car to provide water and various snacks among the passengers. When the stomach was full, the heart would be satisfied. However, this way of eating, abandoning the heavenly emperor, felt like raising some kind of small animal. When Qi Yunran pushed the car past again, the abandoned heavenly emperor raised a hand and immediately walked over. Qi Yunran whispered, "Hello, may I ask if there is anything I can do for you?" Emperor Abandoned Heaven said, "Give me a glass of lemon juice with ice." "Okay, please wait a moment," said Qi Yunran. Qi Yunran parked the car, stepped on the foot brake, and prepared lemon juice on site. The technique was skillful, and no water splashed out. Then, he used a small shovel to remove ice cubes from the bottom of the car and added lemon water. The lemon was too sour, so Qi Yunran asked again, "Do you want sugar?" Emperor Abandoned Heaven said, "No need." Emperor Abandoned Heaven did not like sweet ones. Red Cloud Ran placed the prepared lemon water on the small square table in front of Emperor Abandoned Heaven and said, "This is your lemon water with ice, please use it." "Thank you very much." The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven thanked him like an ordinary passenger, then picked up lemon water and took a sip. It was really sour. And just as the plane was flying smoothly, something disharmonious happened. The passengers sitting in the back row had a quarrel, their faces turning red and their ears turning red. One of them quickly unbuttoned his seat belt, glared fiercely at the person sitting with him, and loudly said, "I won't argue with you, I'll go to the restroom." After finishing speaking, she quickly stood up from her seat and passed through Qi Yunran, quickly walking forward. As she passed through Qi Yunran, she accidentally kicked a small cart under her feet. Qi Yunran dodged to the side and reached out to stabilize the car. Just as she had stabilized the car, 2 more men passed through Qi Yunran in front and behind, shouting, "Don't leave, listen to us." Qi Yunran looked at them moving forward and backward, turned around to look ahead, and it was Yuaner who was in class with her. The few people happened to pass by Yuaner's side, and Qi Yunran stepped on the foot brake with her heel, giving Yuaner a wink. Yuaner received a message and quickly walked over. One of them was in the wrong direction, and Yuaner whispered, "Be careful." "It's okay." Qi Yunran gave a reassuring look, handed the small cart to Yuaner, and walked in the direction of those people. Yuana released her foot brake and pushed the small cart forward. Those few people did cause a small sensation. Many passengers stretched their necks to see that the cabin had returned to quietness. Among the onlookers was the one sitting next to the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven, stretching their necks to take a look, unfastening their seatbelts, and about to get up when they suddenly felt the weight on their shoulders drop. Emperor of Abandoned Heaven took another sip of sour lemon juice and said lightly, "You haven't had your coffee yet." That one glanced at the abandoned Heavenly Emperor, the flesh on his mouth trembled for a moment, his eyes chattered around, and finally sat down again. Tsang and Ibu Lianhua were steadily piloting the plane in the cockpit, and the moonlight and silver were even brighter from here at night. Tsang said, "Thank you again this time. If it weren't for you, I would have flown back alone." Step by step, Lianhua said, "You don't need to be so polite between us. Is the condition of Kuishangsing okay?" Tsang said, "It's okay, I just ate the wrong thing. I'll take a 2-day break and I'll be able to sit in your seat the next time I come back." Upon hearing Tsang's words, Lianhua didn't worry as much and said, "That's good." As the two were talking, there was a sudden knocking on the cockpit door. 3 slow and 2 fast followed by a crisp knocking. 1 step, Lianhua and Tsang glanced at each other, and Tsang raised his voice and said, "Come in." In the control room on the ground in distress, hundreds of computers were connected to every takeoff and landing plane. Hate Changfeng was wearing the same clothes as the Zhishan army and Lin Wushuang, who were on duty today. After inspecting once, he came to the computer of the plane connected to Tsang. Today, Sharoman was on duty, and Zhishan army said, "I don't know how Tsang would feel if he knew the new CEO was sitting on his plane." Lin Wushuang said, "According to Tsang's personality, even if the CEO sits in his passenger seat, he probably won't have any reaction." Hate Changfeng turned down the frequency of the walkie-talkie and continued, "If I tell him that the new CEO is my dad, I'll probably have some reaction." Zhishan Jun and Lin Wushuang glanced at Hate Changfeng, who shrugged his shoulders. At this moment, they heard Sharoman shouting to the plane, "SJ-1458, you have deviated from the heading." "Repeat, SJ-1458, you have deviated from the heading." "Please adjust, repeat, please return to the correct heading." "What's going on?" Hate Changfeng approached the computer, and the small dots on the computer were gradually deviating from the predetermined trajectory, which is very rare in Tsang's flight diary. Hate Changfeng said, "Retrieve the local weather conditions." Sharoman quickly recalled the local world and replied, "Everything is normal." Hate Changfeng said, "Keep shouting." Sharoman adjusted her frequency to continue shouting at SJ-1458, but there was no response. Sharoman looked at Hate Changfeng with concern and said, "SJ-1458 has lost contact." The dots of light on the screen disappeared, and the plane lost radar tracking. The Zhishan army and Lin Wushuang also knew that things were not quite right. The Zhishan army said, "I'll go adjust the radar monitoring." "Wait a minute." Hate Changfeng called out to Zhishan Jun, and an inexplicable idea came to his mind. He blurted out, "Isn't it that abandoning the Heavenly Emperor caused a terrorist hijacking to test the company's security measures?" Zhishan Jun, Lin Wushuang, Sharoman, and everyone around them, including those nearby, were all brushing their faces as they looked at Hate Changfeng. Their eyes were all too obvious. "Your dad, is it so boring?" Seeing the cold wind blowing from behind, Zhishan Jun said, "Sharoman, continue to contact SJ-1458. Hate Changfeng, Lin Wushuang. Think of other ways to see if you can contact Tsang, and I will adjust the radar monitoring." After Zhishan Jun finished speaking, he hurriedly left. Lin Wushuang said, "I'll go check who the police officers on this class are." Hate Changfeng said, "Okay, I'll take care of the rest." The 3 of them had their own tasks and were busy. Sharoman continued to shout into the air, but there was no response. The Boeing 787 seemed to disappear out of thin air. First Boeing 787, 3. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The cockpit door was opened from outside, and Chi Yun-ran raised her hands above her head before anyone could enter. She was pushed from behind and fell in from outside. Tsang reached out to hold on to Chi Yun-ran, and when she looked up, she saw two dark muzzles facing him and one facing Lotus. The two men holding the guns were one tall and one short, wearing black masks. Under the cotton black mask, only two eyes were exposed. The tall one stood at the door and did not enter, while the short one had a pair of sneaky eyes, carefully examining the cockpit up and down. However, the back of the gun pointed to Tsang. Above his head, he threw out a route map and said, "You fly according to this map. Also, increase the altitude of the plane and avoid the radar. Hurry up, or I'll crash you." The gun was loaded, and with his fingers on the trigger, Tsang had no choice but to release Chi Yun-ran's arm. He turned around and put on headphones, adjusting the plane's heading. The plane gradually deviated from its original trajectory and flew according to the new route map given by the short man. At this moment, Sherriman's voice came from the headphones, reminding Tsang that the plane had deviated from its heading. Tsang was pointed at behind the gun, and there were also Chi Yun-ran and Ibu Lianhua in the cockpit. Not only did he accidentally lose his life, but there were also hundreds of passengers outside. Tsang quickly made a judgment, cut off the call, and at the same time, raised the plane's altitude to avoid radar tracking. This was not difficult for Tsang. For Tsang's cooperation, these two people were somewhat surprised. No hijacker would be unprepared, especially for a company like Sijing Airlines with complete safety facilities. Chief Captain Tsang is a leader in the industry. He graduated from an aviation academy and has been flying for 12 years with 0 accidents. He is low-key, calm, and rarely shows his face. The reason why he chose to hijack this plane, which should not be hijacked, is twofold. Firstly, the path is suitable. Secondly, he gave Sijing Airlines a warning, even though the chief captain's plane is under their control. Surprisingly, this captain did not resist. What should he do? Do whatever you want, and the two of them have to suspect that the rumors are false. Yuan-er pushed the small cart around the cabin, but did not see Chi Yun-ran coming back, nor did she see the three noisy people sitting back in their original seats. Intuitively, Yuan-er told her that things were unusual, so she pushed the small cart back to the tea room. There was no one in the tea room, and Yuan-er called out, "Chi." Yuan-er turned around to look for the figure of Chi Yun-ran. A black shadow was thrown down, and Yuan-er had already been hit. Her shoulders and neck were together, and her eyes turned black. She fainted silently. The person who attacked Yuan-er was a very thin person, also wearing a mask and holding a gun. The person who had just attacked Yuan-er used a gun trailer. This person took out a rope and tied Yuan-er's hands and feet, with a cloth stuffed in her mouth. She grabbed and carried her to the restroom closer to the back, where two flight attendants were all crooked, one with their arms tied back and a cloth stuffed in her mouth. Yuan-er became the fourth room guest. The door of the lounge was closed again, and the plane quietly changed course and altitude at night, while the passengers who were gradually falling asleep were unaware. The cabin was very quiet, and it was already very late. According to the calculation of time, the plane should have flown away from the Tower of Mercy and arrived at the Killing Tunnel. Then, it turned from the edge of the Fire Mansion Buddha domain to enter the realm of suffering. It will arrive at the destination before dawn tomorrow, and this long journey is considered to be over. Abandoned Tiandi finally drank his glass of iced lemon juice, and the stewardess's recommendation was not meaningless. For example, Abandoned Tiandi would not drink this cup of lemon juice in the future. The fat man next to him had cooled his coffee or not drunk it. After a while, he looked at Abandoned Tiandi. However, Abandoned Tiandi sat as steady as a mountain without any intention of getting up. After several times of anger, the fat man finally shrank back. His intuition told him not to offend the man sitting next to him. Abandoned Tiandi reached out his hand and pressed the bell above his head. The bell rang 3 times, but no stewardess came. Abandoned Tiandi took out a pen on his notebook, write down a line of words, and then draw out the magazine issued on the plane. The cover character wears a flying system, and the upright system will especially improve the handsome value of ordinary people. Moreover, the person on the cover was born with broad shoulders, narrow waist, and a more standard figure than the models on TV. He held a hat with one hand, and his eyes seemed to embrace the world, accommodating all things. Next to it was written the word, Tsang, Abandoned Heaven Emperor. After reading the cover, he flipped through a magazine. In the cab, Chi Yun-ran heard the sound of a bell and knew that a passenger needed it. She said, "The passenger called me. Take care of yourself first." The short man pointed a gun at Chi Yun-ran, with a fierce look in his eyes. Chi Yun-ran had every reason to believe that as long as she moved around, the gun would explode her head in the next second. However, this did not scare Chi Yun-ran. Just as Chi Yun-ran was about to speak, Lianhua took the lead and said, "It's our responsibility to serve the passengers. Even if you want to do something, please let us serve the passengers until the last second. Now that the captain is under your control, we won't do anything that would put the captain in a crisis. Please let the flight attendant go to the passengers to solve their problems." Ibu Lianhua's words made sense, and she didn't move her eyes or body when speaking, without any intention of resistance. The shorter and taller people exchanged opinions in a low voice, and then the shorter person moved away from the cabin door and pointed his pistol outside, saying, "Don't try any tricks." Chi Yun-ran took a step and glanced at Lianhua. With a gentle nod from Lianhua, Chi Yun-ran adjusted her clothes, lowered her head, and walked out through the cabin door. With a step, Lianhua sat back in the position of co-pilot. Although the plane changed course, the flight remained stable. With a step, Lianhua saw Tsang's fingers slowly moving and wrote the word G in the void. With a step, Lianhua was surprised to see that the target was actually there. Tsang's fingers shook, and with a step, Lianhua's fingers were placed on her legs, their 5 fingers together, patting lightly. Neither of them spoke, and the plane continued to fly. However, in the control room far away from the distressed ground, Sharoman still couldn't contact SJ-1458. Tsang cut off the call, so she couldn't reach her. Lin Wushuang had already found the police officer on this flight, who was Yi Shaochai. Hating Changfeng, she breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I can rest assured that Yi Shaochai is up there. Activate the private channel and contact Yi Shaochai." "I can't get in touch," Lin Wushuang said as he looked at Hate Changfeng. He had just activated his private channel to contact Yi Shaochai, but the communication was all noisy and there was no way to get in touch with Yi Shaochai. At this time, Zhishan Jun had also returned, and his face was very ugly. Zhishan Jun said, "The plane has been found, you see." The computer of the Zhishan Army's Sharoman connected to the radar system and retrieved Tsang's plane. A light dot appeared on the screen, but only flashed briefly. The Zhishan Army looked at Hate Changfeng and said, "This was 10 minutes ago." SJ-1458 appeared on the radar once and then disappeared, and its direction of appearance was connected. Zhishan Jun's finger swiped on the screen and said, "Target, jigging. Breaking the military mansion." Hate Changfeng and Lin Wushuang's faces changed, and the 3 exchanged glances. Hate Changfeng said, "Activate emergency plan A and take action immediately." Zhishan Army and Lin Wushuang were not good at delaying, so they immediately split up to carry out the task. Part 1 Boeing 787-4. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chi Yun-ran adjusted her state and left the cockpit, walking backwards. In the temporary rest area, she saw the skinny person standing there with his hand behind her. Chi Yun-ran could guess that he was holding a gun, and she didn't see Yuaner or anyone else. She must have been under control. Chi Yun-ran couldn't do anything at this moment. The person saw Chi Yun-ran come out and glanced at him, and a fierce expression flashed in their eyes. They lowered their voice and said, "Be honest." The sound made people hear the cold air from behind, but Qi Yunran didn't make a sound. She walked sideways through the person and arrived at the passenger area. Most of the passengers had already lowered their seats, put on eye masks, pulled out blankets and covered themselves, brewing drowsiness, waiting to wake up and land home tomorrow. Looking at these sleeping people, Qi Yunran took a light step and walked to the side of the abandoned Heavenly Emperor. She bent down and asked softly, "Hello sir, may I ask if you need anything?" For the appearance of Qi Yunran, the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven was obviously somewhat unexpected. He glanced at the time on the electronic display screen, which pointed to 9:50 p.m. The weather was good, and the cabin temperature was 26 degrees Celsius, suitable for sleep. Then, the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven pointed to the empty cup in front of him. The cup he had just finished drinking was filled with lemonade, and he said, "Give me a glass of white water and a piece of rock sugar." "Thank you." "Okay, please wait a moment." Qi Yunran didn't have the heart to think about how the abandoned Heavenly Emperor drank that glass of unsweetened iced lemon water, or maybe he himself liked to drink sour. With years of professional ethics, even in the current situation, Qi Yunran didn't show any inappropriate behavior. After listening to the abandoned Heavenly Emperor's request, Qi Yunran wanted to stand up straight and take what the abandoned Heavenly Emperor requested. The chubby man sitting next to the abandoned Heavenly Emperor suddenly said nervously, "Miss, wait a moment." Qi Yunran stopped and looked at the person, asking, "May I ask if there is anything I need?" The abandoned Heavenly Emperor sat beside him flipping through the magazine without saying a word. The chubby man glanced at Qi Yunran and then at the abandoned Heavenly Emperor, saying, "Give me another cup of coffee, hot." "Okay, please wait a moment." Qi Yunran took note of their needs. When she stood up, she noticed a passenger sitting in the back seat raising her hand. Qi Yunran then came to this person, who was wearing a dark blue suit and a duckbill cap. Qi Yunran also asked in a low voice, "Sir, what do you need?" The person didn't speak and took out a pen and paper to write a few words about a cup of hot black tea on the white paper. Then, he moved the white paper to show it to Qi Yunran. Qi Yunran reached out his hand, curled his little finger, and pressed 3 fingers on the white paper, saying, "Is a cup of hot black tea." "Okay, please wait a moment." The person nodded at Qi Yunran, a pair of quiet and calm like lake water, giving people a sense of peace of mind. Qi Yunran turned around and walked back to the resting area, where the thin man was still there, his eyes fixed on him tightly. Qi Yunran looked up at him, and the seemingly weak woman showed her fearless side, which was enough to shake people's hearts. The person was instantly avoided by Qi Yunran's gaze. Qi Yunran withdrew his gaze, pulled out the car, checked what was needed, and then pushed it out. The plane in the cockpit has been set to autopilot. At the current speed, in less than 20 minutes, the plane will fly towards the target, killing the edge of the shattered island with thick clouds. Especially at night, the Boeing 787, which is knocking to lower its flight altitude, shuttles through the sea of clouds. The pale cloud sea outside the window rolls incessantly, and the moonlight and silver flowers fall. The scenery is extremely beautiful. Tsang takes off his headphones, and at this time, I don't need them. One step, Lianhua is the same. The two exchanged glances, and the short eyes standing behind them have been staring at them all the time. However, these two people even exchanged their eyes, but it was only the moment when they paused between turns, and there was nothing else. Contact was like two lambs waiting to be slaughtered at the mercy of others. Compared to Red Cloud Ran, the two of them had no resistance, especially Tsang, who was the captain. Without even a rebuttal, it would be much easier if the hijackers were as obedient as him. The distress ground control system, with Hate Changfeng as the overall dispatcher of this incident, has been closely monitoring. Tsang lowered the flight altitude, and the radar could capture the aircraft's whereabouts. After the aircraft changed course and flew, the route was quickly drawn, and it can be basically determined that the target is to gather and break through the military mansion, the territory of the military capital Yishur. If this is the case, the hijacker is likely to take extreme measures. Not only is the human life on the plane in danger, but the collision with the military mansion may also bring irreparable consequences. Su Huanzhen said to Hate Changfeng, Qin Aoxue has been notified that they are in contact with the Pijuan mansion. The intercepted planes are ready to take off at any time, but I think it's too late. According to the current flight speed of SJ-1455, the plane will rush towards the target in less than 20 minutes, and the evacuation of the Pijuan mansion is a problem. On the plane, there was not only Tsang, but also his father who hated Changfeng. The abandoned heavenly emperor. Although the relationship between father and son was not so harmonious, their bloodlines were still connected. Su Huanzhen looked at the thought-provoking expression of Hate Changfeng and said, "You know, when we were in school, there was a flight competition, and one of the events was flight accident escape. Flight accident escape includes both problems with the aircraft itself and external problems. The problem with the aircraft itself is a functional problem that occurs during flight, while external problems refer to sudden hijacking incidents. This project was held every year in university for 4 years, and every year, Tsang took the lead and never failed. The Zheshan army suddenly told an old story, hating Changfeng for looking at the Zheshan army. The Zheshan army was also looking at him, and the Zheshan army said, I believe in Tsang, he has always cherished his life. I also believe him. Hen Changfeng stood up from his chair and took out his walkie-talkie, saying, intercept the plane and stop taking off. Notify Qin Faxian to prepare the Pijuan mansion. Hate Changfeng and Su Huanzhen returned to the monitoring room. Sherriman's computer was constantly monitoring the movement of SJ-1458, and Lin Wushuang was guarding here. Sherriman saw him and the two of them coming over and said, we still can't get in touch. Hate Changfeng said, don't contact me for now. Give Tsang some time, I believe he can handle it. In the sky and earth, thousands of miles away, in the azure sky, the Boeing 787 piloted by Tsang has never had a safety accident. Hate Changfeng, Su Huanzhen, and Lin Wushuang, the three of them tacitly stopped talking to each other, their eyes fixed on the bright spot that appeared and disappeared on the screen for a while. Part 1 Boeing 787, 5. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Sometimes the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven thinks about what kind of place suffering is and what kind of people there are. Why does Yin Shan Zhu Wu never want to come back since he went to that place? Is it because the sixth heavenly realm makes people feel too lonely, or is it because the sixth heavenly realm cannot accommodate him? When he received the invitation letter from Four Realms Airlines, the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven looked at it and thought for 3 days. At the same time, he explained everything and accepted the invitation. Since it is a place that Yin Shan Zhu Wu is so infatuated with, why should he personally take a moment? During flight, there will be a loud noise from the aircraft, and the sound of the engine can be heard far away. However, the sound insulation measures of this passenger plane are very good, and there is almost no sound from outside in the cabin. From the perspective of the abandoned emperor, one can see the white wings of the aircraft, as well as the bright sea of clouds illuminated by the moonlight outside. There is also a sea of clouds in the sixth heavens realm, and the scenery is not worse than here. Abandoned emperor is not a person who can appreciate the scenery, nor is he a person who likes to appreciate it. He believes that it is meaningless and a waste of time, and the efficiency-oriented abandoned emperor will not waste time on things he thinks are unintentional. When the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven was observing, Qi Yunran had already pushed the small cart back to the cabin. He came to the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven's side first, took out the white water that the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven needed, and filled a glass in front of him. He said, the white water you ordered, please. Then he prepared the coffee and placed it in front of the person sitting inside the Abandoned Heavenly Emperor. At the same time, he took away the empty cup he had finished drinking. After doing these two things, Qi Yunran released his foot brake and pushed the small cart to the side of the man wearing a duckbill cap behind him. A cup of steaming black tea made people feel particularly warm that night. The man nodded at Qi Yunran, picked up the cup of hot tea with one hand, and took a sip. Qi Yunran always maintained the standard smile of a flight attendant, and then pushed the small cart out of the cabin. The plane passed through the sea of clouds and was once again in a clear sky. At this point, it had already left the killing island and arrived at the sky above the gathering area. As the plane left the killing island cloud sea, Tsang had already raised the plane, adjusted its angle to avoid radar tracking. The short man's eyes were tightly fixed on Tsang and Yibu Lianhua, and the various parameters on the dashboard couldn't escape his eyes. Tsang's actual ability was limited. Qi Yunran was pushed into the cockpit again, and her unsteady figure made her hairstyle look messy. Qi Yunran tidied up her hairstyle and stood next to Tsang. Tsang finally spoke up and said, "Are you okay?" Simple caring words, with a gentle voice, and a gentle expression in her eyes. Qi Yunran shook her head and said, "It's okay." Tsang Wei nodded slightly, and Qi Yunran stopped speaking. Absolute trust did not require too many words, just a glance and one action for medical treatment was enough. The plane had already started counting down, and the hands were moving forward in an orderly manner. The ticking sound was particularly clear in the quiet cockpit. As Tsang turned around, the dark muzzle of the gun was also aimed at him. Now that the plane no longer needed Tsang's driving to reach its destination, these people had no need to stay. When the gun was pointed at Tsang, Qi Yunran could no longer calm down and said in a low voice, "Senior brother." Tsang raised his hand to stop Qi Yunran, his eyes slightly opened and he looked at the short man. Tsang's eyes were not ordinary black, with a faint purple circle around the edge of his pupils. He usually covered them under his partially closed eyelids. At this moment, when he opened them, his calm eyes made people feel fearful. The short man's hand holding the gun trembled unconsciously, and he forcibly calmed down, saying, "Reincarnation in the next life, don't fly a plane." At the moment when his finger pulled the trigger, Tsang had already moved his figure. The short man only felt the figure in front of him flicker in an instant. The hand holding the gun had already been grabbed by someone, and the trigger could not be pulled. The thin palm on the back of his hand had an astonishing force, only to hear a click. "Ah!" As soon as the word, "ah," was spoken, the short man felt a pain in his neck and his body collapsed, with Tsang's arms supporting him. "What's wrong?" The tall man guarding the door was originally waiting for his companions to deal with the people inside, preparing to escape before the plane crashed. However, he did not hear gunshots and a scream made him realize that things had changed. As he turned into the cockpit with his gun, a white figure flashed in front of him, with almost the same speed, unloading the gun and system. The tall man stared at Lianhua with a pair of eyes, seemingly resigned to fate, but when he took action, he was decisive. The tall man said, "Do you think this is over? There are still our people outside." "Are you referring to him?" One step, Lianhua reached out and pointed towards the direction of the cabin door. The tall man followed his hand and saw that the thin person in the temporary rest area had already been pressed over by another person. Standing behind him was the man wearing a duckbill cap. When he looked up, he could see a long scar on his handsome face. Tsang said, "Yi Shaochai, thank you very much." Yi Shaochai shook her head, and with one step, Lianhua handed over the person in her hand to Yi Shaochai. She turned around to pick up the unconscious short man in Tsang's hand and said, "I'll leave this to you." Tsang Wei nodded and said, "Be careful. Don't worry." Lianhua only gave Tsang 2 words. In one step, Lianhua and Yi Shaochai handcuffed the 3 individuals separately and took them out of the cockpit. There is a place in jigging called Taiyinsi. Taiyinsi has a type of sand called Xingqian Sha. Xingqian Sha emits a light blue light at night, like stars, shining brightly, making it a major landscape in jigging. Unfortunately, no one is enjoying it now because the people on the plane do not know that they have just traveled around jigging. The plane quietly changes direction again without people's knowledge. Lianhua once again locked the person who was brought up for trial into the lounge and said to Yi Shaochai, "Leave the rest to me." Yi Shaochai nodded, expressing her belief that one step Lianhua could solve the problem properly. Qi Yunran had already released Yuaner and a few others. With a fierce temper and a face full of anger, Yuaner said fiercely, "Dare to hit me," and ask him to pay for all his property in order to make a comeback. Red Cloud Ran comforted Yuaner a few words in a soft voice. As soon as Lianhua saw that everyone was fine, she let go and said to Red Cloud Ran, "Red Cloud Ran, come with me." Qi Yunran followed Lianhua out of the temporary rest area as he said. Qi Yunran walked out first and went straight to the side of the abandoned Heavenly Emperor. She bent down and whispered, "Sir, I'm sorry, could you please leave for a moment? Please go to the rest area." Emperor Abandoned Heaven raised his eyes to look at Red Cloud Ran. Red Cloud Ran could sense a feeling of unhappiness from his eyes, but Emperor Abandoned Heaven continued to cooperate by unfastening his seatbelt and following Red Cloud Ran out of the passenger area. As Emperor Abandoned Heaven walked away, the fat man had not yet stood up. One step, Lotus had already sat in Emperor Abandoned Heaven's seat. In the quiet cabin, 2 faint clicks were heard, and the blanket covered the fat man's hands when the Abandoned Heavenly Emperor returned. The seat next to him was already empty. At this moment, a bass voice came out of the loudspeaker, although it was clear to pronounce, it still had a hint of laziness. "Hello passengers, it is now 10 o'clock in the evening. The plane has flown over the Killing Broken Island and headed towards it. The sea of clouds on the Killing Broken Island is a grand scene, which can be seen from the window. Wishing you a pleasant journey." After listening to the timely report from the loudspeaker, Emperor Abandoned Heaven took out his pen and wrote this sentence in his notebook. He remained calm in the face of danger, had a clear mind, and was 8 cents. Step by step, Lianhua sat back in the position of co-pilot. Tsang had already adjusted all the data back to normal, and the instrument displayed the correct data. Step by step, Lianhua turned her head to look at Tsang, breathed a sigh of relief, and said, "It's also the first time I've seen fake data under someone else's nose. I often do it when I'm in school." Tsang said lightly, then Lianhua hesitated for a moment and smiled. Tsang had reconnected to the ground control room, synchronized the frequency, and said, "Boeing 787 flight number SJ-1458 to the ground, repeat, Boeing 787 SJ-1458 to the ground. The danger has been lifted. We are now returning home, please do the pick-up work on the ground." Sharoman received a call from SJ-1458 at the first moment, and Hate Changfeng said, "Tell him that the ground is always ready for him to return." Sharoman pinched the microphone and said, "Got it. The ground is ready to pick up SJ-1458. Welcome back." "Tsang, welcome home," said Zhe Shanjun as he looked at the shining dots on the screen again. End of the first article. Chapter 2. Aoxue 13 Peaks, 1. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The logistics director of Four Realms Airlines is Chu Shirtu. When Emperor Abandoned Heaven did not come, Chu Shirtu received orders from Su Huanzhen to arrange a comfortable residence for Emperor Abandoned Heaven. However, fate is not as good as fate. After cleaning the apartment arranged by Emperor Abandoned Heaven, the cleaning lady forgot to close the window. A heavy rain caused a flood in the house, and it would take at least 3 days to stay. Chu Shirtu had no choice but to let Emperor Abandoned Heaven live in the place of Hate Changfeng. After all, it was a father and son, and Chu Shirtu's own deception should not be a problem. Although Hate Changfeng refused 100 or 1,000 times, he couldn't let the Abandoned Heavenly Emperor sleep on the street. The appointed person carried the Abandoned Heavenly Emperor's luggage and took him back to the apartment. Four Realms Airlines has a dedicated employee apartment, which can be occupied by those who are not in the local area. Hate Changfeng is at the manager level and has a 2-bedroom, 1 living room apartment. He lives alone, and the other room is usually empty. Now it happens to be for the temporary residence of Emperor Abandoned. Emperor Abandoned only carried a bag, a set of changed clothes, and other supplies have been airlifted by the people below and placed in the reception room. Once the Emperor Abandoned apartment is sorted out, they can take it over. Hate Changfeng glanced at the abandoned Heavenly Emperor, who was like a real big shot. He took out 2 cans of ice beer from the refrigerator, placed one in front of the abandoned Heavenly Emperor, and opened the other himself. He sat sideways and looked at the abandoned Heavenly Emperor, saying, "You live well in the 6 heavenly realms. What are you doing in this difficult situation?" The Emperor of Abandoning Heaven opened the cold beer and took a sip after his white breath dissipated. Ice's teeth trembled and he said, "You have to ask Su Huanzhen why he sent me an invitation letter." "Su really?" Hate Changfeng widened his eyes and was clearly shocked by the news. He shook his head and said, "The famous Su sage, who has no last resort, has made a mistake this time." The abandoned Heavenly Emperor didn't take it seriously, picked up the iced beer and took another sip, saying, "Is that all you have to drink in adversity? The taste isn't very good. You can skip it." Hate Changfeng glanced at Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor, stood up, and said, "Let's go. I'll take you to eat the delicious food of hardship. Of course, you can also choose not to eat it. Sitting on a plane all night, I didn't sleep at all. After getting off the plane, I kept walking and didn't have time to eat. I was indeed a bit hungry, and even the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven didn't refuse." He picked up his coat and put it on his body, followed the hateful wind out the door. Hate Changfeng found a small and medium-sized hot pot restaurant and invited Emperor Abandoned to have a meal of hot pot. The hot pot was sprinkled with a bunch of morning peppers, and Emperor Abandoned felt that he had tasted sour and spicy food that day. For him, the food in distress was given 1 point, the lowest score. The hot pot was so spicy that the abandoned Heavenly Emperor still ate it leisurely, as if eating ordinary dishes. He hated Changfeng and wanted to know what kind of emotional fluctuations the abandoned Heavenly Emperor had, just like he wanted to see the old monk no longer settle down, but it was like a planet colliding with Earth, it was too difficult. After finishing the hot pot, Hate Changfeng took the abandoned Heavenly Emperor home again. After eating, he should also rest. He worked all night last night, and with the hijacking incident, Hate Changfeng was so tired that he couldn't open his eyes. When he returned home, he fell asleep. Abandoned Heavenly Emperor was not as tired as him. He sat and read a book before tidying up and going to bed. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven slept until 8 o'clock in the afternoon. It was already completely dark outside, and he didn't change his pajamas. When he opened the door, he heard a commotion of ping-pong in the kitchen. He walked over and took a look, hating Changfeng for cooking dinner. This son usually doesn't even know which side the kitchen door is facing, but one day he can still wash his hands and make soup. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven became even more curious about the hardship. He stood at the kitchen door, watching the scene of a riot in the kitchen, and deeply doubted whether the things made by hating Changfeng could be eaten. Hate Changfeng seemed to notice an observer at the door. He smashed the garlic with a kitchen knife and turned to look at the abandoned Heavenly Emperor, saying, "If you want to eat, you have to wait for a while. Go to the living room and wait. Look at me, I can't do it well." "Oh, are you nervous?" The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven squinted his eyes and didn't stop. He turned around to sit in the living room, turned on the TV, switched to the news channel, and casually listened to any new news. It was nothing more than a major and minor incident of hardship, and the biggest thing was the hijacking. However, the hijacking was also dangerous. After reporting for a while, he went to report on the incident of the cat lost next door. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven was not interested, so he turned off the TV and leaned on the sofa to rest his mind with his eyes closed. Hate Changfeng for cooking dinner, 2 bowls of braised noodles, and a plate of cold dishes he bought. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven glanced at the overly simple dinner, and even if he had a late-night snack in the 6 heavens realm, it was not that picky. It was also his son's first time cooking something for himself, and he still had to give face. So the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven picked up chopsticks and started eating noodles. Hate Changfeng didn't rush to eat, so he turned on the radio and adjusted the frequency to 108.6. A beautiful girl's voice came from inside. That's all for today's program. After the advertisement, please continue listening to our next program. Aoxue 13 Peaks, brought to you by the residual sound of Kongu. Then came various advertisements in a mess. Hate Changfeng picked up his chopsticks and quickly started eating noodles, while abandoning the Heavenly Emperor stopped his chopsticks and drank water fiercely. Hate Changfeng glanced at abandoning the Heavenly Emperor and said, "Why don't you eat? Is salt from adversity free of charge?" Hate Changfeng sneaking away a piece of noodles, "It's a bit salty." He also took a sip of water and said, "I didn't control the salt well. Let's make do with it. I'll put less salt tomorrow, or I'll take you to the cafeteria to eat. I will no longer care about abandoning the Heavenly Emperor, because the program on the radio has already begun." There is a deep bass voice coming from inside, speaking softly. Have you ever recalled the story your mother read before you went to bed when you were a child? Do you remember the first story you read? Do you ever want to relive that carefree time, tell your story, and share it with everyone? Here are the 13 peaks of proud snow, and I am the residual voice of an empty valley. It was a storytelling program, and Emperor Abandoned Heaven thoughtfully glanced at his son. His son was already in his 30s and had already passed the age of listening to stories before bedtime. Surprisingly, he still listened to this kind of program. Is it because he was too indifferent? Hate Changfeng didn't even look at him, all his attention was focused on the radio, and the sound of the empty valley came out from inside, slowly speaking strange stories. Hate Changfeng listened attentively, sometimes forgetting to eat. The sound of empty valley remnants, the abandoned Heavenly Emperor remembered this name. The radio continued to hear the sound of Konga's residual voice, which was clearly just a midnight storytelling channel. Konga's residual voice did not speak in any vivid tone, telling a story in a plain and indifferent manner, interspersed with various explanations. It was clear whether he was listening to people or stories, as the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven began to yawn, while Hate Changfeng listened with relish. The program didn't last long, and in half an hour, it switched to the next program. I hated Changfeng for finishing his bowl of noodles, but the Emperor of Abandoned Heaven only ate half of it because it was too salty. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven had never eaten such salty food before. I hated Changfeng for looking at someone who wasted food and said, "Eat less and you won't starve to death. Let's eat tomorrow." The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven raised his eyebrows, wondering if it was his own, but he was sleeping all afternoon and not very hungry, so he didn't argue with his son so much. Chapter 2. Aoxue 13 Peaks, 2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. It's only a 10-minute drive from the apartment to the company. The car for Abandoned Tiandi has not yet been officially delivered, so Abandoned Tiandi can only take his son's car. Hen Changfeng really doesn't understand how Su would have thought of inviting Abandoned Tiandi to fly in as CEO. Is there no talent in hardship? Chu Shirtu is very suitable. Oh, Chu Shirtu is the logistics minister, and that page of book is also okay. Oh, one page of book is on leave, and Hen Changfeng has a headache when he sees Abandoned Tiandi sitting behind in the rearview mirror. It's even more painful when he thinks that he will have to stay with himself for 2 days. Abandoned Tiandi is still sitting like Mount Taishan. Without shaking, he found that Hen Changfeng was peeping and said, "Zhu Wu, I haven't seen you for several years. Do you want to be a father? Then I won't move to a new apartment. Let's live with you." As soon as Emperor Abandoned Heaven spoke, he felt the car shake violently, veer off course, brake suddenly, and almost throw Emperor Abandoned Heaven out of the car. Emperor Abandoned Heaven sat back in his seat, glanced at his son, and said, "Do you want to murder your father? You can use other methods or faster. If killing doesn't break the law, do you think I would be soft-hearted?" Hate Changfeng restarted the car and drove it back onto the road. Hate Changfeng said earnestly, Dad, isn't the 6 days realm good? The air is fresh, the sun is bright, and the scenery is beautiful. It is most suitable for you, an environmentalist who cares for the environment. Look at the hardships, there are many people, cars, and air pollution. In your eyes, you will have poor adaptation and your life will be threatened. That person named Tsang, will he come to the company today? Emperor Fei didn't listen to his son's rambling, but suddenly asked. He was so angry that he was taken aback and realized who Emperor Fei was asking. He nodded and said, I don't know. I remember he didn't need to fly today. When he didn't fly, he didn't go to the company. He was really approved. He didn't need to report to the company every day. When he flew or the company held a meeting, he would only be invited to come. What do you ask him? The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven said, It's okay, feel free to ask. Hate Changfeng sticking out his tongue, just ask casually, that's strange. No, go back and tell Tsangli that the new execution is long-term. Anyway, there is the support of the leader Su Huanzhen above, who will fly his own way. Even if he abandons the Heavenly Emperor and holds the title of CEO, he cannot cause trouble. The Heavenly Emperor doesn't know what his son is thinking, even if he wants to do what the Heavenly Emperor wants to do. Even if he hates Changfeng and opposes it, it cannot be changed. The car drove all the way to the company and found a spot in the garage to stop. Emperor Abandoning Heaven and Hate Changfeng arrived at the office building together. As soon as they entered the office building, they saw Tsang also walking in from outside. He was wearing casual clothes today and did not wear a flying uniform. When he saw Hate Changfeng, Tsang stopped and greeted him. Seeing the person next to him, he thought it was probably the CEO from his heart. Hate Changfeng's father, and Tsang also said hello. Emperor Abandoning Heaven's gaze stayed on Tsang's body for 3 seconds, which was no different from what was seen in the magazine. If there was a difference, it was probably the one who looked like an outsider. It feels stronger. Hate Changfeng felt a bit strange about how Tsang appeared in the company today, so he asked, I remember you didn't need to fly today. How did you think you wanted to come? Tsang said, Su Huanzhen notified me to come over for today's meeting. Hate Changfeng mysteriously approached Tsang and placed his arm on Tsang's body, saying, Isn't it about hijacking? Tsang shrugged his shoulders and shook off his hatred towards Changfeng, saying, I don't know. There will be an announcement after the meeting. You just need to read the notice then, and... Tsang glanced at the abandoned Heavenly Emperor and said, The CEO will arrive on the first day today, but you have received the meeting notice. The abandoned Heavenly Emperor had already received a notice of the meeting. When the hijacking incident occurred, the abandoned Heavenly Emperor was on the plane and was also involved. He was a new CEO, so in any way, he would not have been left behind. The abandoned Heavenly Emperor nodded and said, I have received the notice. Tsang said, okay, I'm going up now. Do you guys go up now? Hate Changfeng. Tsang glanced at Hate Changfeng as he spoke, but Hate Changfeng's eyes were no longer on Tsang's body, not even on abandoning the Heavenly Emperor's body. His gaze shifted directly to the other side of the hall, a thin figure on the glass passage. Tsang followed Hate Changfeng's gaze and saw that he was also a newcomer. Xiao Zhongjian, an intern in the psychology department, and Shi Jiuru had specially introduced him. Hate Changfeng patted Tsang's shoulder and said, My dad hasn't eaten yet. You take him to the cafeteria first, and I'll wait. Without waiting for Tsang to agree, a gust of wind blew past Tsang's face. Then Tsang saw that Hate Changfeng had disappeared in the place where Xiao Zhongjian had disappeared. With Hate Changfeng's temperament, Tsang had long been accustomed to it. Turning his head, he abandoned the Heavenly Emperor and stood still in place. Tsang said, The cafeteria is on the 3rd floor, I'll take you there. The abandoned Heavenly Emperor didn't say he didn't agree. He was quite curious about what his son was doing. Song held down the elevator and took the abandoned Heavenly Emperor to the cafeteria. Hating Changfeng for a moment, he broke in front of Su Huanzhen, shook his hair, made a handsome posture, and said, Su Huanzhen, good morning, where are you going? Have you eaten? I didn't eat either. Let's go together. Su Huanzhen kept walking under his feet. Yesterday, Shi Jiuru was still assigned work, and Su Huanzhen had no extra time to chat with Hate Changfeng. He said, I've eaten at home before. You can go eat first. Well. Hated Changfeng for not making the appointment, he didn't give up and said, I'm not hungry, I'm not in a hurry to eat. Let's have lunch together. I heard there's tuna in the cafeteria today, let's go together. Su Huanzhen walked up the stairs, shook his head, and said, I have a bento with me. I won't go to the cafeteria at noon. Hate Changfeng pulling at the corners of his mouth, bringing bento. Who did it? However, Hate Changfeng was stunned for just a second before following Su Huanzhen up the stairs and continuing without giving up, saying, that night, there must be time at night. Su Huanzhen shook his head and said, Moon Vortex has 2 months left before the college entrance examination. I need to go back and tutor him. If you don't go eat again, the cafeteria will close. It's already 8:50, and you still have 10 minutes to eat. Hate Changfeng glanced at his watch, only 9 minutes left. He was startled and quickly ran over Su Huanzhen up the stairs. Halfway through, he turned back to look at Su Huanzhen and said, next time, let me know when you have time. Let's go eat together. Su Huanzhen felt that he didn't give up on hating Changfeng, so he nodded reluctantly and said, let's wait until the end of the Moon Vortex college entrance examination. You go quickly. It's agreed, I'm leaving. Hate Changfeng was definitely satisfied and excited. He walked with the wind and blew all the way to the cafeteria. Tseng and the abandoned Heavenly Emperor had already eaten almost everything and could leave after drinking a bowl of soup. Hate Changfeng searched for the last bit of food with a large plate and sat next to Tseng before starting to eat like a whirlwind. The abandoned Heavenly Emperor watched his son eat all the food in front of him, then drank a large bowl of soup and comfortably belched. He lifted his wrist and glanced at his watch, saying, there are still 3 minutes left, let's go to work. Tseng Wei shook his head slightly and said, this will cause indigestion. Remember to come earlier next time. Hate Changfeng didn't take it seriously, got up and walked out first. Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor and Tseng also got up afterwards. Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor and Hate Changfeng were together. Hate Changfeng had to take abandoning the Heavenly Emperor to the Human Resources Department to report to Ji Wuxia for the onboarding procedures, while Tseng went to the office to prepare for the meeting. Ji Wuxia asked someone to complete the onboarding procedures for the abandoned Heavenly Emperor, and the staff's efficiency was very high. In no time of 10 minutes, all the procedures were completed properly. She handed the work permit to the abandoned Heavenly Emperor and said, welcome to Four Realms Airlines. Have a pleasant cooperation. Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor didn't have a cold face. He took his work permit and replied, have a pleasant cooperation. Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor doesn't have a cold face, and Ji Wuxia also thinks that this person is not easy to get along with. He gave a glance to Hate Changfeng. Hate Changfeng knew that the HR manager of this beautiful woman meant for him to take people away and not spread cold air here. Hate Changfeng took abandoning the Heavenly Emperor to his office. Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor's office was on the 10th floor, a separate large office. The company assigned a secretary to abandoning the Heavenly Emperor, who was a beautiful secretary. Hate Changfeng was very worried about this secretary, working under abandoning the Heavenly Emperor, he would not die or die. Abandoning the Heavenly Emperor walked around the office, but he didn't care about this office environment. Expressing dissatisfaction and hating Changfeng, he collapsed on the sofa and said, I have also joined and signed the contract. You are now an employee of Four Frontier Airlines. So, what are the requirements for abandoning the CEO? I changed my secretary, Emperor Abandoned Heaven said without looking up as he sat on his office chair. Che, it's like someone is willing to be your secretary. Do you think anyone else can handle you except for Master Fu Wing? Zhu Wen sat up, crossed his hands in front of him, and gave a sentence to the Abandoned Heavenly Emperor. Emperor Abandoned Heaven took out a pen from the pen holder, opened the pen cap, and wrote a line on his notebook, saying, "Unfortunately, Master Fu Wing cannot come over now. I will personally tell Su Huanzhen that you can leave now." Hate Changfeng really didn't want to stay here. He stood up and said, "The conference room is on the 7th floor. Don't go wrong, I'm leaving." After finishing speaking, he walked out directly. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven heard the door slam shut. The meeting was scheduled for 10 o'clock in the morning, and there was still time. The Emperor of Abandoned Heaven opened the information just brought in by his secretary, familiarized himself with the company's situation, and prepared for the meeting. Chapter 2. Aoxue 13 Peaks, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xiao Zhongjian entered the office 3 minutes slower than usual. Shi Jiuru had already brewed his flower and fruit tea and was marking important events on the calendar with a pen. When he heard the sound of the door opening, he looked up and saw that Xiao Zhongjian's expression had not changed much. He was a rare calm young man. Shi Jiuru said, "I've encountered Hate Changfeng again." Xiao Zhongjian nodded and put the bento box from his handbag into the small fresh keeping cabinet in the office. He then sat on the office chair, tidied up the table, opened the computer, and flipped through his notebook. Shi Jiuru took out 2 forms from the folder on the table, got up and walked to Xiao Zhongjian's side. He placed the forms on Xiao Zhongjian's desk and said, "Since you have done a good job, I have decided to give you an early confirmation. Fill out this form and give it to me before the end of work in the morning. As for the benefits after confirmation, please follow the previous instructions. If you have any other needs, please let me know now." Xiao Zhongjian glanced at the table and found that coming to Four Realms Airlines was an accident. After leaving his previous job, Xiao Zhongjian was unemployed for a period of time. During his unemployment, Xiao Zhongjian applied for a language program host for Midnight Stories. During the communication with the audience during work, he unexpectedly interacted with Shi Jiuru, and the two of them hit it off. Shi Jiuru, after learning that Xiao Zhongjian did not have a formal job, strongly invited Xiao Zhongjian to come to the psychology department of Four Realms Airlines. Xiao Zhongjian felt that the job was suitable, so he accepted the invitation and officially came to work. Xiao Zhongjian had come to inspect before officially joining the company, and coincidentally met Hate Changfeng. From then on, this fate became an inseparable knot. Xiao Zhongjian said, "Okay." Shi Jiuru briefly explained the requirements for filling out the form, then turned around and went back to his own position. The psychology department of Four Realms Airlines is a relatively small department. Before Xiao Zhongjian's future, there was only Shi Jiuru alone. Shi Jiuru was naturally a minister, a psychological counselor, and also a part-time clerk in the psychology department. However, fortunately, the employees of Four Realms Airlines have good mental qualities, and not many people come to him for psychological counseling. Otherwise, one person would really be too busy. Now that there is an additional Xiao Zhongjian, Shi Jiuru is not so busy and has free time to do other things. Xiao Zhongjian is a person who is particularly quiet without causing any conversation. Shi Jiuru is not a particularly talkative person without psychological therapy, and his office is usually in a state of separation. Xiao Zhongjian was only halfway through filling out his form when he knocked on the door. He looked up and saw that it was Feilu from the Human Resources Department, a lively little girl who loved to laugh. He pushed open the door and walked in with a piece of paper in his hand. He smiled at Xiao Zhongjian and walked up to Shi Jiuru. He placed a document in his hand on Shi Jiuru's desk and said, "Teacher Shi Jiuru, this is a new interviewee named Qima Tianxia. He is only 24 years old this year and looks pretty, just Feilu lowered her head in a mysterious low voice and said to Shi Jiuru, "Teacher Shi Jiuru, that person named Qima Tianxia looks so fierce. Be careful when you interview." Shi Jiuru listened to Feilu's warning and smiled, saying, "Okay, I understand. I'll go over later." Feilu nodded and said, "Then I'll go back first." "Hurry up." After Feilu finished speaking, she turned around and went out. Shi Jiuru took the resume and opened it first. He was a 24-year-old male who had just graduated from university and was a local majoring in mechanical manufacturing. Shi Jiuru couldn't help but laugh when she saw this major. She came to apply for a job as a psychological counselor in the field of mechanical engineering, but it was a bit mismatched. Shi Jiuru stood up and left her seat, saying, "Xiao Zhongjian, I'll go out for a while. You can still take care of me here." Xiao Zhongjian nodded in response, and Shi Jiuru pushed the door out. There was only Xiao Zhongjian left in the office. Xiao Zhongjian got up, poured a cup of hot water, brewed a cup of tea, and sat down to continue filling out the form. Suddenly, he felt something was wrong. When he looked up, he was startled and hated Chang Feng for squinting his eyes and standing at his desk. When he saw Xiao Zhongjian looking over, he raised his hand and placed a handbag on Xiao Zhongjian's desk, saying, "Here you are, I'll go to the meeting first." After finishing speaking, Hate Changfeng didn't give Xiao Zhongjian a chance to refute. He turned around and disappeared. Xiao Zhongjian reached out to take a look at the bag that Hate Changfeng had put down, which contained a bread. Xiao Zhongjian found it funny, but he didn't know where he got it from. Xiao Zhongjian was not hungry now and put it in the fresh-keeping cabinet with the bento. Shi Jiuru came to the personnel department, and Feilu pointed to the small conference room next to him. Shi Jiuru nodded and turned to the small conference room. When the door opened, Qima Tianxia turned around. His young face was full of disgust towards the world, and his rebellious appearance was not kind to everyone who appeared in front of him. Shi Jiuru opened a chair in front of Qima Tianxia and sat down with a smile, saying, "Hello, let me introduce myself first. My name is Shi Jiuru, the Minister of the Psychology Department, which is your future leader." Qima Tianxia glanced at Shi Jiuru with disdain, giving Shi Jiuru a feeling that he was here to apply and that Qima Tianxia was here to interview him. Shi Jiuru opened the resume of Qima Tianxia and said, "Let me introduce myself first." The cold voice of the horse racing around the world sounded, saying, "It's all written on the resume, look for yourself." Shi Jiuru was stunned for a moment when he was scolded by Qima Tianxia, and then his professional qualities kept him smiling. Shi Jiuru said, "The most important thing to be a psychologist is to communicate with people. I want to see your expression ability." Qima Tianxia looked at you with such a busy expression, changed your posture, sat a little more seriously, and said, "My name is Qima Tianxia, I study mechanical design. I took a psychological counselor exam in my free time. I heard that you have good salaries and dormitories for recruitment, so I will come. It's all up to you. If you think I can go to work at any time, but if not, just tell me now. I'll go find someone else." Shi Jiuru nodded lightly while listening and said, "Why not pursue your original major?" Qima Tianxia said, "Because I'm not interested." Qima Tianxia wouldn't say that they beat up their supervisor during their internship, which resulted in not being able to graduate smoothly. They wouldn't be willing to accept an underachieving student in their major, but in order to make a living, Qima Tianxia must have a job. Shi Jiuru asked some other questions, and Qima Tianxia answered them one by one with an increasingly impatient expression, saying, "Have you finished asking?" Shi Jiuru closed his resume and said, "I've finished asking. I'll be back to work next week." Qima Tianxia took a glance at Shi Jiuru, but still didn't fully believe his words, and said, "Do you want me?" Shi Jiuru nodded and said, "Yes, I'm missing an assistant. You're just right for me." Qima Tianxia was a bit stunned. After a moment, she picked up her hat and pushed the door out. Shi Jiuru felt that Qima Tianxia's walking posture was a bit strange, which made him have to pay attention to it. When Qima Tianxia walked, he took one foot first and the other foot slowly followed. It was obvious that he had a problem with one leg. Shi Jiuru silently remembered it in her heart and got up to the HR department to tell Feilu the interview results. Feilu was also a bit strange. Shi Jiuru surprisingly left Qima Tianxia behind, but it was Shi Jiuru who was using it, so she didn't say anything more. She registered it in the notebook, and only then did Shi Jiuru return. Psychological Department. Su Huanzhen's meeting lasted for an hour before it was over. After the meeting, he hurriedly left, but the abandoned Heavenly Emperor did not catch his shadow. Tseng stood at the door of the conference room and saw the back of the hated Changfeng disappear at the end of the corridor. When he turned around to leave, he heard Su Huanzhen calling out to him. Tseng stopped and walked with Su Huanzhen. The abandoned Heavenly Emperor then walked out of the office, glanced at the direction in which they had left, and turned back to his own office. Su Huanzhen closed the office door, poured a cup of tea for Tseng, sat down, and said, "Senior, I'm deeply sorry for startling you this time." Tseng shook his head and said, "It's okay. You don't have to worry about it, the subsequent handling will be troublesome." Su Huanzhen said, "I will handle the follow-up matters. Please don't worry, Senior." Tseng took a sip of tea and said, "If there's nothing else, I'll go back first." Su Huanzhen said, "Please, Senior." Tseng nodded and stood up to bid farewell to Su Huanzhen, leaving the company. Chapter 2. Aoxue 13 Peaks, 4. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Xiao Zhongjian has already filled out the form and handed it over to Shi Jiuru. Xiao Zhongjian's handwriting is very beautiful, flowing like clouds and flowing like water, and it is a beautiful regular script. Shi Jiuru reviewed Xiao Zhongjian's writing from top to bottom and said, "No problem, I will submit it to the HR department. The HR department will sign a formal contract with you then. The position I have designated for you is the Deputy Director of the Psychology Department, and a new colleague will come in a few days." Before Xiao Zhongjian arrived, Shi Jiuru was the minister. When Xiao Zhongjian arrived, he became the Deputy Minister, and the entire Psychology Department was a leader. Fortunately, Shi Jiuru hired another person, and not all of them were leaders. The number of people in the Psychology Department has increased exponentially, so it shouldn't be a bad thing. Xiao Zhongjian said, "So, what do we need to prepare for our colleagues who are interested?" Shi Jiuru thought for a moment, shook his head, and said, "No need, I'll just prepare it." Since there was no need to prepare, Xiao Zhongjian sat back in his original position to continue working. It was rare for employees to come to the psychological department for consultation on weekdays, and some were also pre-arranged. Today, another young newly hired employee made an appointment to come at 10:30. Xiao Zhongjian prepared the necessary documents and looked at the alarm clock on the table. With 5 minutes left, Xiao Zhongjian closed his notebook and looked up to see a young person standing at the office door, who was the arranged employee. Xiao Zhongjian stood up and greeted Shi Jiuru, saying, "The person I had arranged has arrived." Xiao Zhongjian has the credentials of a psychological counselor and has a deep understanding of Xiao Zhongjian's psychological counseling ability. Teacher Jiuru nodded and said, "Okay, you can go." Xiao Zhongjian didn't speak anymore, left his seat and walked to the door, saying to the employee, "Follow me. There is a separate room for psychological counseling." Xiao Zhongjian hung a "Do Not Disturb" sign at the door, closed the door, asked the employee to sit down, spread out his notebook, and said, "We can start now." The young employee appeared very cramped and uneasy, sitting in a neat and orderly manner with his hands tightly clenched together. There was still a thin sweat on his forehead. Xiao Zhongjian turned on the air conditioning, set it to 25 degrees, took out a tissue from the tissue box on the table, and placed it on the table in front of the employee, saying, "Don't be nervous, relax. You can say anything you want. Our conversation won't tell anyone." Xiao Zhongjian's voice was gentle and not very gentle, nor would it be very resistant. The employee really relaxed and let go of his hands. He picked up a tissue on the table and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Then he held the tissue in his hand, his fingers loosened and tightened, and he loosened it again and again. After several repetitions, he finally spoke up and said, I feel like I can't continue. For Sijing Airlines, Xiao Zhongjian had conducted an inspection before officially starting work. The company's system and welfare benefits are outstanding in the industry, and it is not easy to come in, but there are few who leave. This employee said that he couldn't continue. Xiao Zhongjian was somewhat puzzled and said, "What is it that makes you not want to continue? Can you be more specific?" The employee said, "I am from the ground handling department. A few days ago, I received a notice that I would be transferred to jigging. I don't want to go. I heard that jigging is very scary, and the military is a very strict soldier. Jijing and Kujing are adjacent, separated by a sea. To travel from Kujing to Jijing, there are only two modes of transportation. By boat and by plane. Xiao Zhongjian once went to Jijing by boat, but he has never seen the legendary military capital Xiao Zhongjian." Xiao Zhongjian said, "Rumors are not first-hand. If you just bring them up because you don't want to change jobs, I don't think you will be forced. You probably have other things to do." The employee nodded and said, "Yes." Xiao Zhongjian's pen remained on the paper, recording the key conversation with the employee. The entire conversation lasted for over an hour, and Xiao Zhongjian also wrote a full 3 large sheets of paper. Xiao Zhongjian was extremely serious in his work, writing every word and sentence on it. He patiently answered the employee's various questions and chose an appropriate time slot for guidance. Xiao Zhongjian noticed the change in time and said, "That's all for today. I told you that when you have time to go back, you should think carefully. The next time is scheduled for Friday, and it's still this time." The employee was already very different from when they came in, with a relaxed expression and hands already spread out, saying, "Okay, thank you very much." Xiao Zhongjian shook his head slightly and said, "No need. After going back, you should go out and walk more. Don't always stay confined in the room. Sometimes broadening your horizons will open your mind and you will see a different scenery." The employee said, "Okay, I got it." Xiao Zhongjian stood up and opened the door. After seeing off the employee, he returned to the office. As soon as he entered the office, he saw not only Shi Jiuru still sitting inside, but also an additional person. It was none other than hatred towards Changfeng. After the meeting, hate Changfeng came over directly. However, at that time, Xiao Zhongjian was doing psychological counseling, and hate Changfeng was just waiting in the office. Since Xiao Zhongjian came to work, hate Changfeng has become a regular in the psychological department. Shi Jiuru has long been accustomed to it. Although hate Changfeng came diligently, he did not disturb Shi Jiuru's work, and Shi Jiuru also came and went. Hate Changfeng saw Xiao Zhongjian come in and suddenly bounced up from his seat. He smiled and said, "You have finally come back." Xiao Zhongjian put down his notebook and pen in his hand and said, "What's up?" Xiao Zhongjian has always been indifferent, and it's rare for him to get emotional. Anyway, it's right to hate Changfeng. He leaned over and asked, "What did the little employee just tell you?" Xiao Zhongjian glanced at hate Changfeng and put his notebook in the drawer, saying, "This is an employee's personal matter. I don't know how to say it, and you shouldn't ask. Don't wander around during work hours." Hate Changfeng's face collapsed. "If you don't give him a good face, he'll just give it a lesson." Hate Changfeng said, "I'm going on a business trip to Jigging later. It will take me 3 days. I came specifically to see you for the last time." Xiao Zhongjian looked over with a more serious expression, hating Changfeng for knowing he had made a slip of the tongue. He chuckled and said, "I said the wrong thing. I need to go clean up first. The plane at noon is too late to wait for me to come back." Hate Changfeng finished speaking and blew away like a gust of wind from Xiao Zhongjian's side. Xiao Zhongjian saw that he had already arrived at the office entrance for a long time, and called out, saying, "Take care all the way." Hate Changfeng heard the sound and stopped his steps. He turned around and smiled at Xiao Zhongjian, saying, "Come back soon, I'm leaving." The office door was closed again, and the footsteps of Hate Changfeng disappeared outside the door. Xiao Zhongjian pulled out a psychology book from a nearby file rack and opened it to search for information. The employee who arrived today is also the first one Xiao Zhongjian has encountered since he started working. Xiao Zhongjian has many aspects to study carefully. This time, Hate Changfeng is on a business trip to Jiging, accompanied by the Zhishan Army, Chiba Legend, and Eternal Sky. The four of them are led by Chiba Legend, and the target they will face is the leader of Jiging, the military capital. Yishe Military Power. Part 2. End. Chapter 3. Gathering Scenery and Clouds, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The world is divided into 4 realms. Suffering, gathering, destruction, and Tao, with suffering as the center. The other 3 realms exist around suffering, while beyond the 4 realms, there are 6 heavenly realms, 4 demon realms, death realm, and consciousness realm. Each realm has a dedicated route with dedicated personnel in charge. There is a special line from suffering to gathering, with a flight time of 5 hours. The main responsible persons for this line are 2, one from gathering and one from suffering. These 2 individuals are Xiang Duxiu and Murong Qing. Xiang Duxiu is a person personally appointed by the military commander Yi Shi of the gathering army. Murong Qing, on the other hand, was invited by Su Huanzhen at the beginning of the Sword Dynasty. Xiang Duxiu was unrestrained, and Murong Qing was able to take control of the overall situation. Although there was a slight misunderstanding when we first met, which caused a minor joke, after the misunderstanding was explained clearly, we got to know each other very well, and there was never any difference on this road. We were safe and sound until the hijacking incident occurred the day before yesterday. The plane that Chiba Legend and others took this time happened to be on duty with Xiang Duxiu, while Murong Qing was his co-pilot. After the accident, the 2 flew for several days in a row. Firstly, they observed for any abnormalities on the route to ensure its safety. Although Xiang Duxiu did not follow the usual path, he was sure to complete what was entrusted to him. Moreover, there was another Murong Qing watching beside him. Secondly, they communicated with the security department of the headquarters in distress, and were able to bring firearms and ammunition onto the plane. This is a very difficult task in the relatively complete security system, and it is necessary to identify loopholes in the security system to improve it. Xiang Duxiu flew the plane quickly and steadily, and the vibrations caused by the takeoff and landing of the plane were very small, just like on flat ground. Even Chiba Legend personally came to admire this technique. The plane flew safely all the way to Jiging, stopped at Jiging Airport, and was picked up by a dedicated person. The 4 people were first taken to the hotel to rest. Xiang Duxiu and Murong Qing were responsible for the route, but they were not responsible for the negotiation with Yi Shi's military power, so the 2 and the 4 were on different paths. The purpose of this visit to Jijing and the meeting with Yi Shi military power is not only to explain the hijacking incident that crashed into Jijing and broke through the military mansion the day before yesterday, but also to explain something that Su Huan really wanted to do. That is, the daily takeoff and landing of the plane cannot meet the needs of passenger flow and needs to increase the number of flights. However, Yi Shi military power's stubbornness in the 4 realms is well known, and it is difficult for him to change the initial agreement and increase the number of flights than to climb the sky and pick the moon. Chiba Legend felt that Su Huan really deliberately made things difficult for him, so he initially refused to accept this business trip. However, later on, he did not know how Su Huan really persuaded him, so Chiba Legend changed it. I came to Jiging by plane with a business trip team. Before formally meeting with Yi Shi's military power, the four of them need to have a small meeting to discuss tomorrow's meeting. Among the four, He Changfeng and Zhe Jun have never seen Yi Shi's military power, and the name of Yi Shi's military power is only hearsay and rare news reports. However, Chiba Legend is different. Before entering Four Realms Aviation, Chiba Legend had worked with Yi Shi's military power for a period of time and held a high position. Chiba Legend knows Yi Shi's temperament about military power well. There is little talk about it in the eternal sky, but wherever Chiba Legend goes, there is a timeless legend. Chang Kong, from suffering to gathering, and then from gathering to suffering, has never left the side of Chiba Legend for half a step, which has already become the default of everyone. The legend of Chiba opened his accompanying notes and began to explain to the other two the origin of Yi Shi's military power, as well as his temper and temperament. Hating Changfeng was a very casual person, and in his eyes, there were no difficult people to get along with except for abandoning the Heavenly Emperor. Even Yi Shi's military power, which was rumored to be difficult to get along with in the Four Realms, was easy to grasp in Hate Changfeng's eyes and could be solved in minutes. The Zhe army was meticulous in his work, and while explaining the legend of Chiba, the Zhe army was still taking notes seriously, occasionally raising questions. The legend of Chiba also explained them one by one. Although Wangu Changkong held important positions in the gathering realm from time to time, the relationship between Chiba Legend and Wangu Changkong is also very familiar with Yi Shi's military power. Chiba Legend did not tell Wangu Changkong about things that Wangu Changkong did not know, so whether to listen or not is actually no different for him. Chiba Legend once said, Yi Shi's military power is the capital of breaking the military mansion, governing the country through military means and implementing militarism. All actions have certain rules, and no one can break this rule. Therefore, in tomorrow's negotiations, remember not to step on the bottom line of Yi Shi's military power. Zhe Jun picked up his pen and wrote a line on his notebook, saying, tomorrow's meeting, we will fully cooperate with Mr. Chiba. Please rest assured, Mr. Chiba. Although Chiba Legend doesn't like Su Huanzhen, he is quite at ease with the Zhe army sent by Su Huanzhen. Based solely on the fact that the Zhe army shares the same origin as the Xianshou, Chiba Legend is not at ease. When Chiba Legend is at ease, the absent-minded hater of Changfeng on the other side is not very clear about his origin. He only knows that it was recommended by the Zhe army to enter the Four Realms Aviation. It is said that the heartfelt CEO comes from the abandoned Heavenly Emperor in the Six Heavens realm, who hates Changfeng's father. Regarding this, Chiba Legend has not had the opportunity to prove, and it is unclear whether it is true or false. Zhe Jun noticed that Chiba Legend's gaze was fixed on Hate Changfeng, who was still studying a bouquet of fake flowers on the Zhuo table in the small conference room. He then nudged Hate Changfeng with his elbow and said, we're talking about business, focus more. Hating Changfeng but without any reason, he said, Mr. Chiba, do you think Yi Shi's military might like flowers? Chiba Chuanji shook his head and said, although the people in Jigging are no different from those in other realms, there are few women in the Pejuan mansion. Even if there are, they are all dressed in military uniforms and don't love these things. Hate Changfeng shook his head regretfully and said, that's too regrettable. Flowers and plants can cultivate a person's temperament, and shouting and killing every day is not suitable for this peaceful era. Wangu Changkong, who had never spoken before, said, peace has always been relative to war, and there is no absolute peace. Hate Changfeng is not familiar with the Chiba Legend, and even more so with the silent eternal sky. However, Hate Changfeng has always been familiar with it. After listening to Eternal Sky's words, he nodded forcefully and said, I agree with your statement that any peace is built on war. Without absolute strength, there can be no peace. The business trip team is here to negotiate, not to talk about war and peace. Chiba Legend said, it's a bit late. Tomorrow, we have to go to the Pejuan mansion and go back to rest. There is still a tough battle to fight tomorrow. Hate Changfeng yawned appropriately and said, thank you, Mr. Chiba, for explaining today. Tomorrow, I will fully cooperate. Please rest assured. Hate Changfeng said this, and Chiba Legend had no reason not to believe it. The four of them booked 2 suites. Chiba Legend and Wangu Changkong shared the same apartment. Hate Changfeng and Zhishan Jun lived next door. The two of them said good night to Chiba Legend and Wangu Changkong before walking out of this suite and turning back to prepare to rest. Regarding the matter raised by Hate Changfeng during the small meeting just now, the Zhishan army still had some confusion and said, "What did you mean by just mentioning whether Yi Shi's military power likes flowers?" Hate Changfeng placed his arm on the shoulder of the Zhishan army, who tilted his shoulder and threw it down. Hate Changfeng didn't care and took out his room card as he opened the door, saying, "Do you know that the newly arrived CEO, who was just invited by Su Huanzhen, is the airborne CEO who abandoned the Heavenly Emperor, my father? He doesn't like flowers. You can't even see a flower in his house. I think since Mr. Chiba said that Yi Shi's military power is difficult to get along with, is there anyone in this world who is even more difficult to get along with than abandoning the Heavenly Emperor?" The Zhishan army only remembers that the new CEO came over on Tsang's plane and also participated in the capture of the hijacker. During the meeting, the Emperor of Abandoning Heaven only introduced himself and only said his name, without mentioning any other words. It's unclear if he hates Changfeng for being so difficult to get along with. However, he is definitely not a good person to get along with. The Zhishan army said, "If you say that, I have to doubt whether the Emperor of Abandoning Heaven is your biological father." Hate Changfeng shrugged his shoulders and let go of the card slot inserted by the door, saying, "I hope not. Let's wash up and sleep, as Mr. Chiba said, tomorrow will not be easy." Coming out of the school gate, there were countless experiences, big and small. Zhishan Jun was already adept at handling crisis events, and he didn't have much concern about tomorrow's events. Besides, there was the Chiba Legend, which was on par with Su Huanzhen. Zhishan Jun said, "You go wash up first, and I'll organize my notes." Zhishan Jun worked diligently and meticulously, hating Changfeng for not being able to catch up with the dust. He said, "Okay." Then he crawled into the bathroom. Zhishan Jun sat down on the chair and opened his notebook again.